First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tear Talk. I'm not going to really hop on the bandwagon here with the Jeffrey Epstein case. Suicide, not suicide, I don't know, but I do want to talk about high-profile inmates and how sometimes the media can make it harder for correctional officers or correctional staff to do the job that must be done, which is, guess what, guys? To protect that inmate. So when we get back from our sponsors, we're going to talk about dealing with high-profile inmates, which would include Jeffrey Epstein. So, guys, if you haven't, the show Tear Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please, if you haven't, subscribe, like, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stand by for our sponsor, and we'll come back when we talk about dealing with high-profile inmates and how the media makes it harder for us to keep that inmate safe.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Thank you guys for listening to our sponsor. Just kind of enjoying the day at the park. Want to let you guys know, especially in regards to the Jeffrey Epstein case, that it's hard when you have a high-profile inmate and the media is on top of that story. Because in all efforts that corrections has to put in place to protect that inmate, one thing that makes it very hard for us to do is control that information that the other inmates can get a hold of, especially if it's a top story in the news, especially if you see it in the news and you see it in the newspapers. It's very hard for us to regulate that information and to control that information before it gets to the rest of the inmates in the population. And remember, guys, our job is to protect the inmates. So I'm saying this in regards to that's our job. That's what we have to do. And when you get the information that's being thrown out there, especially in relationship to a sex offender, a high-profile sex offender, that's going to put a target on that inmate's back. That inmate now is at risk. I mean, there are times where inmates will be watching the news, especially in a public area, and all of a sudden it'll go right to the most popular thing that's trending. Let's say in this case here, you have the Jeffrey Epstein case. Now, I, as an officer, maybe I can change the channel on the inmates because I think that should be something I should do, or maybe turn off the TV. But that doesn't stop the inmates from going back to their cells or picking up a newspaper because, yes, inmates have access to the outside world. They're very well knowledged on what's going on in current events. So as the news releases all this information, they don't understand the ripple effect it's going to have behind the wall and our efforts to protect that high-profile inmate. Now, I don't know what's the case with Epstein's suicide or not. I'm not here to discuss that. I'm more talking about the dealing with high-profile inmates. But when you have an inmate that's getting that much attention, other inmates may look to take that inmate out. And in a high-profile case, like a Tier 3 sex offender like Jeffrey Epstein, well, some inmates may see that as a good deed. I'm going to take that inmate out, and that's going to be my good deed for the day. So I just want the media to be aware that every time you post a story, every time you get information out, I want you to look at how it affects us from doing our job. Because if something happens to that inmate, you'll be quick to point the fingers and be quick to say, wow, I can't believe he wasn't protected in that system. Well, maybe you should look back and see the stories that you're being released. Maybe you should look back and see that by releasing it out there, just putting it out there without even thinking about the repercussions, how it has us scrambling, and we're going above and beyond to protect that inmate, but you're making it harder because you're releasing the information so easily that are going to get to others who are going to want to take that person out. So again, if we're looking to point the finger, let's also look at ourselves. Okay, media, I just wanted to get this out there just in case you look to point and blame, like what happened, why did the system fail, and all this other stuff. I just want to make people aware that when you have information, especially related to a high-profile case, especially a high-profile case that deals with sex offenses, the more you release it, the more it's harder for us to control that information from getting to the inmate population. And then when the inmate population finds out, it becomes harder for us to protect that inmate. That's why we have such things as solitary confinement, or I'll say a very scary word, isolation. Sometimes we have those things to protect the inmates. I know that's usually not mentioned on the extreme left, but yes, these are tools that we employ to protect not just the population, not just ourselves, but also protect the inmate that we're putting in there. And sometimes that's because we can't control the information coming in, and now we have to do what we can to make sure that inmate's protected, which means that we go to the extreme and we isolate that inmate from population until we can determine if the threat is real and how do we navigate around it. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.